So, we are going to explore the wonderful topic of loneliness. And interestingly enough, you know, that's probably a hard topic to talk about and make very interesting, needless to say. But we're going to try to do that tonight. And I'm going to say some stuff. I want you to process it, think about it, and then we'll probably have opportunities for questions and answers and to explore this so that you can walk out of here feeling like I know a little bit more about loneliness and I can handle it better. How does that sound? Woo! Okay, let's do that today. So let's start almost at the beginning. So let's think about this. We as humans are social beings. We, in a sense, were created to interact with other people. If you think about it, the way in which we learn in social interaction. We learn from our environment. We learn things by connecting and talking and working with other people. If you think about attachment theory, babies need to develop their social interaction and learning about the world through their bonds that they make and create with their parents. Their ability to even be in relationship later on as childhood or adulthood really stems from their ability, their interactions with their mother from birth. So we are social beings. We were made to be with each other, to interact with each other. When we think about learning, I spoke about learning. A lot of what we learn about, we talk about socialization, is from the models that we learn in our environment. How do we learn how to be in a relationship? Anybody can hazard a guess? Yeah?
By being in a relationship.
By being in a relationship. So you're in a relationship with your parents, you're in a relationship with your siblings, you're in a relationship all around you. You watch people in relationship. This is how you learn. Social interaction. We are social beings. I want to also suggest to you that neurobiologically, we have hormones that help us connect with other people. Anybody heard of the love hormones? Do you know? Yeah? Yes. So our bodies have oxytocin, which they produce to create bonds. Can you imagine that? So neurobiologically, we're made to make sure that we create these bonds. So that gets released, especially in mothers, right? So when mothers have babies and they're nursing and they're connecting with their child, the hormone oxytocin is released to facilitate that connection. It's also released in sexual intercourse. So when you're together intimately, oxytocin gets released so that you have create bonds. That's why it's called love. That's really why. Anyway, so in social development, especially teens, there's this whole process of learning how to belong and connect to social groups, friends, peers. So throughout life, throughout the development, you see that we're not really made to be alone. I want to expand that a little further. Our psychosocial health depends on being in groups and interacting with each other. Can anybody tell me what might be the cause of loneliness and isolation? What might result from extreme loneliness and isolation? I can't believe it. Sorry? Okay, even more than that.
Being bullied.
Sorry?
Being bullied.
Being bullied? Is that what I'm hearing? Yes. Depression, yes. Yes.
Low self-esteem.
Low self-esteem, okay. Yes? Yes?
Lack of social interaction.
Lack of social, what does that cause though? When you're not hanging out with your friends, talking, connecting with your family, what can that actually cause? Anxiety? Well, some people are anxious so they don't hang out with people. That's another level of crazy, but anyway. But you know what? Loneliness and isolation can actually increase your blood pressure. Loneliness and isolation can increase your cortisol. Yes, it can increase your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone. But it also can cholesterol levels. Someone said depression. The fact is that people who are lonely and isolated are actually can get sicker. Physically sicker. So here's my point. We were not made to be alone. Even back in the days when they had to hunt and gather and find food in the woods, they did that as a group. They did that socially. And you can imagine that we were protecting each other. We were helping each other. So being together is almost a protective factor for our own health and well-being. As I said earlier, there's also another hormone, which is cortisol. We call that the stress hormone. And what happens is, when people are isolated, that stress hormone, cortisol, increases, and it decreases your immune system. So your immunity, your ability to take care of yourself physically actually decreases. That's why you get sick. So loneliness is not a good thing. It's actually a risk factor for physical illness. So one more point that I have to tell you, that we were not made to be alone. In Genesis 2 verse 18, way when God created the earth and created people, does anybody know what he said after he created man? It was good. What did he say after he created? Yes?
It was not good for man to be alone.
Exactly. It says in Genesis 2:18, and the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. And interesting that Mercy said that after all his creation, after all the things that he made, what did he say? It is good. But after he created man, who was by himself, he said, it is not good for him to be alone. So here we see that over and over in life, social development, neurobiological development, through faith and religion, we see that we are not to be alone. Not supposed to be isolated, off in the corner, picking our nose, not talking to anybody. That's not supposed to happen. So it's good for us to be in social interactions and gatherings. So our need to be together is not by accident, and our desire to be in fellowship with others is absolutely normal. We will definitely experience loneliness in different ways. So, overall, I think I've substantially made the point that we shouldn't be alone. But in this world, we are. What types of ways or what situations might we be alone or experience loneliness?
We move further from our communities because of our job, might get a new job.
Absolutely. So when we move away from our families, from our social company, we have to go to get a new job, we have to go to school and get an education because we think we're smart, you know, whatever. We got to move away, and that might create a sense of loneliness. You go to a whole new place, you'll feel lonely. Any other ways in which you might feel lonely?
I was going to say
rejection is a big one, and also failure as well.
Okay,
Fail
so
and get rejected.
rejected by people?
By people, by, yeah.
Okay, so you're rejected. So teenagers who are trying to fit into a social group, who are trying to get in, and they are trying to connect and belong, and they said, you know, teenagers are mean. You don't look cute. You can't hang out with us. Or you're not wearing the right clothes, so you need to go sit down over there. So rejection or abandonment would definitely make us feel lonely. Yeah.
And also, like, what I feel is that when you don't hang out with a lot of people, you just feel like, you know, you're left alone. You're just alone. You don't even have anyone to talk to.
Well, you don't have anybody to talk to, right? Absolutely. Yes. So we're getting to the deep psychological parts of loneliness. When you don't feel like you have people you can relate to or connect with, then you start to feel lonely. Yes. Being an only child, you're going to have to find some friends out there. Yep. Yep.
Like identification, like who they identify with, you know, I guess kind of get what I'm saying on the social and the personal.
So when we don't really identify with a group or even a class or our ethnicity, can you imagine sometimes you talk about biracial children who are like, I don't know which one I fit into, right? And so that can create a sense of loneliness because the identity is confusing. So that might be an example of how you might feel lonely. Did I have another hand over here?
I guess sometimes we are taught to participate in conversation about topics that we know nothing about.
Yes. Yes. Right. So you might not know about a topic, or you might not be able to connect with what's going on around you, and you feel isolated. So you can, and throughout our lives, we will probably experience one or more of these lonely aspects of loneliness and feeling alone. Yes.
I feel like sometimes the opposite can happen, where you feel like you are meeting all the social expectations, but inside you're so broken, you don't open up to who you really are. You're just like maybe what we see with people like drugs, like all this stuff, but inside they're so isolated because they're not really themselves.
So you've connected to the wrong group, right? Last time in Mississauga, we talked about the whole idea of knowing yourself. Because when you know yourself, you get to better choose who you connect with and who you identify with. And that helps you feel put together, in a sense. So there's also, the quiet presence. How many people, so we have extroverts who love the energy of being in the presence of people and can soak that energy up all the time. And then we have the introverts who are like, I can only take so much of y'all, so I'm going to sit over here because y'all annoying me right now. So we have the introverts and extroverts. And so we have different levels of being able to feel connected and bonded and in places of feeling together. And I want to suggest to you that, as I said earlier, one of the key things is we experience loneliness and feeling alone most readily and most deeply when we're not comfortable with ourselves. When we're not okay with who you are as a person, you don't want to spend time with yourself because you don't like yourself. You're always looking to fulfill and connect with other people who will maybe create an atmosphere where you don't have to deal with who you are as a person. The other reason that you might feel alone and lonely is you're not willing, and we talked about vulnerability the other time, you're not willing to really go deep. So you stay on the surface. Even in company, in your friends, you don't really go down and talk about real issues. You don't really connect with things that are real and vulnerable. You kind of stay on the surface. How many of you have been in a place where there's tons of people, you're interacting, moving around, but you feel lonely? Right. And for the most part, you are not connecting with the people around you maybe because you're different, whether you have different values or beliefs or whatever. Maybe it's because you're not connecting on a deep level, where you're connecting where people are vulnerable and can be trusted, and you guys can talk about things that really matter. And so these are some of the things that cause us to feel lonely or alone. And I also want to suggest that alone is the absence of people. Loneliness is the state of feeling alone. Does that make sense? So being alone, you're alone, there's no one there. But loneliness is that state, that psychological experience of not being able to connect. And so it's important for us to be able to identify where we are. So here's how we're going to deal with loneliness. 1, you've got to figure out where you are. First of all, what needs do you have in terms of social interaction? Are you an extrovert or are you an introvert? That will help you kind of decipher, I need this much interaction or I need this much interaction. And so once you know that, then you won't have to beat up yourself so much about feeling alone or lonely, because you know where you fit and what's comfortable for you. The other thing is you can't be connected to everybody. So being alone doesn't mean that, or being connected doesn't mean, I have like 5 billion friends and they're all, I can hang out with them all. It's quite impossible to create quality connection with 5 billion people. So in the essence of feeling that you're connected, it's good to establish some solid, concrete places or with people you can be really vulnerable with, people you can trust. When you feel lonely or alone, that's where you go to feel connected, because then that will reduce that feeling of isolation. Then there's that general stuff. When I work with some women, we work with women who are abused, one of the biggest factors around women who are abused is that they're often isolated. They're socially disconnected because of the power and control of the relationship. And so we are always pushing them to be connected in the community, get some support groups, be connected with people. And so one of the other pieces that you can really work at is finding things you like to do that are social interaction, right? So if you like sports or crocheting or knitting, I don't know how interesting that is, but anyway, if you have things that you like to do or things that you like to engage in that have people that have similar thoughts and beliefs and ideas as you will start to feel connected and you will reduce that social isolation. So that's a psychological. As Christians, I want to suggest to you that in a increasingly secular world, that's what my boss says, increasingly secular world, you are going to be alone. Hands down, you are going to be alone. You're going to feel it. You're going to experience it because your values and beliefs are different from the people around you. And if you hold to those values and beliefs, if they mean something to you, you are going to stand by yourself. And in some cases, you're going to have to learn how to stand on your own. So while we are social beings, while we're created to be connected, we also have to learn when we have to stand alone. And with our faith, or Christianity, if somewhere in the Bible, Matthew, Jesus says, if you decide to follow me, you will be persecuted for my name's sake. That's what he says. He doesn't say you're going to have a whole bunch of friends, you're going to hang out, and it's going to be good at some chalet and some chicken, and it's all going to be good. No, he said you're going to be persecuted for my name's sake, because you stand for something different. You're a royal priesthood, a holy nation is what the word says. And you are to be distinct from everybody. So that requires you, that's going to call you to feel that isolation sometimes and loneliness. Not because you're not comfortable in your own skin, not because you don't have people who understand your values, but because you are to be different in a very secular world. I want to also throw out to you, anybody remember the apostles? Somewhere in Acts, there's some apostles, disciples of Jesus. And when Jesus had gone to heaven, he left them and said, I will send you a comforter that will help you. The Holy Spirit will help you to do all these things. And you have to realize that in that time, they were actually being persecuted. The Jews were seeking to kill them. They say, you guys believe in a Jesus that was risen. I don't know what you guys are talking about. You are crazy. Stop talking this foolishness. And if you keep talking about it, we're going to kill you. And in the face of that, they still decided to follow. And so that's where, when we talk about loneliness and experiencing being alone, that as Christians, as believers, that's the experience that you will feel. And so you have to differentiate that between the psychological feeling of loneliness and isolation versus the loneliness and being alone when you're standing for your faith. And so, as we think about that, when you are trying to be, I like to call it Daniel, it's good to have a community of faith, that when you feel that isolation out in that world that's very isolating, that you can come in and be reminded about why, what it is you believe, and why you believe it. So I hope that as we talk about loneliness, you realize that you got to be comfortable with yourself. You got to be okay with being alone. You got to understand who you are and what your needs are in terms of social interaction. You have to have people that you can connect with. Not on the surface level. Those are your acquaintances. You guys can hang out here and there and whatever. Those are acquaintances. But you need people that you can trust, that you can be vulnerable with. And that is not the 100, 500 people that you might interact with. That's only a few people, sometimes one or two, that will help you reduce that feeling of isolation and loneliness. And to remember that even if you have to stand alone in your faith, that Christ has given you a comforter through the Holy Spirit to work with you and be with you. So I hope that this conversation has been enlightening, that you'll walk away thinking, hey, I know how I can be alone and always be in social interaction.